Today we are going to discuss about the current situation of the Basmati. Now, Basmati is a subcontinent pride. It is grown in the subcontinent in the uh, foothills of the Himalayan terrain, starting from the Suleiman Range, then Keithar, and then traveling down to other parts like Siachen, then goes to Leh, which is called Ladakh. Basmati basically is grown in a specific environment. That is the most important thing. Basmati, I mean, you can't take the seed of Basmati and then you can go to Europe and then you can go to, you can grow in the United States. You can grow, but the kind of aroma, the kind of genetics you will not find it in those areas. Specifically, you see there are two important factors, which is one is genetics and the other is phenotype. Now, genetics you can take it from the Himalayan terrain, and you can take it to any other parts of the world. But that phenotypical condition, which is the environmental conditions like night temperature at the time of the flowering stage, and then the soil itself, uh, these are the phenotypic character which gives aroma and which give nutrients to the basmati and make it very special. So it can be grown. It is normally grown in the foothills of the Himalayan terrain. And once we say the Himalayan terrain, it's the basically glacier water. The glacier went down, and it is carried through mostly 8 channels. We call it rivers. On the west side, it starts from the Indus, and then there is a Jhelum, then there is Chenab, then the Ravi, then Sutlej, then Vyas, and the Gangetic Plain, and Yamuna. So these all are being fed from the water of the glacier from the Himalayan terrain. So both India and Pakistan, they have been growing it once it was a combined India before 1947. It was being grown in that area, and after the independence in 1947, again the Pakistan northern areas, especially Punjab northern areas, which is the plain area, and then the Indian Punjab, then Indian Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, and a couple of other states like UP, but UP is not fully included in that. It ends if you start from Himalayan terrain, near about downstream 500 kilometer. This all basmati is grown. After that, we say that the climate has changed, and the basmati grown after the 500 kilometer from the Himalayan terrain is not of that original basmati. After partition, Pakistan and India have been growing it. Before 1980, if you look, export was not that much popular in India and Pakistan for the basmati. But in 80, basically, once the race for development of the better varieties. Once we say the better varieties, it means per acre production is more, so that it can be attractive for the farmers. Before that, there was only one variety, which is 370. There are also instances and references in literature that before that there was another variety which was 217. But 370 is supposed to be the parent of all basmati varieties which we have today. Now, then the race started between India and Pakistan, and Pakistani scientists were able to make a breakthrough, and they made a new variety which is 386, and then later on in 90s, in the early 90s, they developed another variety which is called Super Basmati. But India continued the work, and most important. you see, the breeding program is basically involved initially once there are two parents of both basmati. But then, with the passage of time, both India and Pakistan started a hybrid breeding of the rice. Uh, all the most of all the varieties which has been developed after 1980, they are hybrid varieties. In India, if you look at that, original variety was Dehradun and Tarawih. But after that, they have developed SR30, Usha, Rambir. These are all hybrid varieties. I mean, which means that one parent was Basmati and one parent was long grain, non-Basmati. Pakistan did same thing, and then they developed 385, which was one parent who was non-Basmati. Later on, after 2000, in 2005 rather, India did more deviation, and they developed a new variety which is called C1121 with both parent non-Basmati. So that was the major change. Up, basically, the Basmati varieties, they got started getting popular outside the Indian subcontinent, I would say, once the people started moving in the Arabian Desert, like Gulf area. UAE was developed, Saudi was developed, they got the money, and when the people from India and Pakistan went there, because they were using Basmati since decades and centuries, so then the export was started to Gulf area primarily. Before that, very little was being exported to EU, where a lot of expatriate Indian and Pakistani were living. But it was basically mostly before 1980. It was mostly confined to expatriate Indian and Pakistan population. It now with the passage of time and the people started living in Gulf area, uh, Arabic people, they got accustomed to the taste of basmati, and then they started using basmati. It was like after 1980. In the meantime, Iran is a big consumer of rice, but they were using mostly till 1990 they were mostly using non-basmati. Pakistan was exporting non-basmati rice to Iran, but then we sent them super basmati. It was in mid 1990s, and it got very popular, and the Iranian, with a huge consumption, they converted to that. So global scenario changes, and now all around the world, like Pakistan is exporting to 130 countries, and India is exporting to 160 countries around the world, including Africa. Basmati is considered a uh, prime variety with the higher cost. Like if non-basmati long grain is being sold at $500 per ton, basmati is sold minimum 800, $900, and then sometimes 1100, $1,200. So it's simply aromatic variety. Now, what it makes this special for basmati, I have told you that it's exclusive aroma is the main thing, and the cylindrical shape. The rice is extra long grain. Now, as far as the current situation is concerned, if you see after 1980, both India and Pakistan, uh, when they started, I can give you an example that in 1992, Pakistan was only exported $300 million. $300 million we were exporting basmati in 1992. India was also doing like the same $400 million. But after that, a lot of efforts were made in the private sector. People started moving and going there. Which is primarily the rice export association of Pakistan, played a very important role. And they started moving, visiting themselves to Gulf area and introducing to other people, and same was done by All India Rice Exporters Association. Uh, then once when we reached to 2000, already the global uh, export trade, global rice trade, basmati rice trade was crossing like 100, like 1 million ton. I mean, just mediocre 800.8 million ton. We were now crossing 1 million ton. And by 2010, both India and Pakistan, they reached to the level of 2.8 million ton. Interestingly, 2010 and 11, Pakistan was doing 40% of the global trade of basmati, and India was doing 60, rather less than 60, Pakistan more than 40. In the meantime, the prices of basmati are so inched up, and the variety which we were selling in dollar terms, because dollar does not depreciate or appreciate so much. Fluctuation is not there in dollar. So we were in the initial, I remember that in late 90s, it was being exported like 500, 530, 540 dollar per ton. But then also the cost of production increased, and the price of the basmati in the global market started increasing. Global trade, if you look at the moment, which uh, today, last year it was 53 lakh, I mean 5.3 million ton, out of which India was doing 4.415 million ton, and Pakistan did 890 890,000 tons. So it means the Pakistan share was near about 80 to 20%, and 80% India was doing. As I've told you that in 2010 and 11, we were doing more than 40%, and India was doing less than 60%. But it drastically changed. I will discuss the factor that how it changed such a big level. Pakistan share came less than 20%. Um, Now, if you look at the current situation, uh, I think the worrying factor is that from last year, you see the basmati global trade has been more than 4 million ton since last 5 years. India was doing 3.8 before 5 6 years, and Pakistan was doing like 7 and 8 million. So we were above 4 million ton, and it was increasing 4 million ton to 5.3 million ton. But this year, if you look at the Indian financial year has finished, and Indians have lost near about 10% of the volume as compared to last year. Uh, their export has come down to 4.15 million ton from 4.15 million ton last year. Same is going to happen in Pakistan. Pakistan last year did 890,000 metric ton of basmati export. But I fear that when we will be finishing the year in June, uh, we will be hardly achieving 700 million ton. So there will be a short export of nearly 180,000 metric ton from Pakistan, and India already has less export this year than last year, near about 400,000. So it means that the global basmati trade this year is minimum 10% less, which is a worrying factor. Now, both India and Pakistan has to think about that. There are multiple factors for that, but now we have, it's a wake-up call, and we should see that what is the causes of that. But before we go to the causes, I would uh, I would like to say that there are some positive point that the volume has increased tremendously, and the price per unit has increased tremendously in the last 30 years. So that is a positive thing. And one of important aspect I have already discussed with you is the consumer base has increases. Now, expatriate Pakistani and Indian were consumer outside a subcontinent, and say also from people from Bangladesh. But now Iranian, the big consumer of Basmati, Saudi Arabian, the big consumer of Basmati, and lately in last 3 years, Iraq has emerged as a third largest Basmati importer, and then Yemen. It's a poor country, but Yemen is doing wonders as far as Basmati consumption is concerned. Um, in Basmati global importing countries, if I make the ranking, till last year, Iran was the number one and Saudi was number two. But this year, Iran, due to the sanctions, has import less. And this year, with 900,000 plus, Saudi Arabia is number one. Number two is number Saudi Arabia is number one. Iran is number two. Iraq is number three. Wonderful. I mean, Iraq is now more than 400,000 metric ton importer. Then Yemen, it is like 300,000 metric ton importer. Yemen. And the fifth is then Kuwait, and that's USA, and sorry, EU and USA. So it is the plus point that the Basmati consumer has gone through diversification, and now many people, if you go to far areas of like western part of Africa, like southeastern part of Africa, North Africa, even you can see Basmati being sold by Pakistani and Indian exporters in a big way. Uh, yes, there are some difficulties, but now I will discuss what is the reason for that, that why it is happening that we are uh, having this kind of trouble. But the most important thing is the input cost. You see, yes, a lot of research has been done in developing new seeds. So, a lot of research and a lot of varieties has been developed mostly by Indians, and then a few has been developed by Pakistan. But the cost of production once we purchase at the mill gate today is much higher than what we were purchasing uh, in 1995 or the tail end of the last century. Uh, the prices were like less than half of today prices, and then we were selling at $600, then $800, then $900. But today, if you look at the prices of the input cost of the paddy itself, the rough rice has gone more than double, and but the export price is it is $1,000. It is sometimes $9,000 this year. It is less than $9,000 from India and Pakistan. So this is one thing that the seed sorry production is stagnant, not increasing, but the cost is increasing, and for the last 5 years it has been increasing constantly. Uh, Second thing is rising freight. It is killing, like rising freights are killing because this year due to pandemic, containers are not available. Ports are working off the capacity due to the restrictions. Uh, Freight uh, as compared to last year, April to 2020, has gone up 53%, from 22% to 53%, depending upon the estimation and the commodity. So that is one thing which is giving right. The other thing is the processing cost. I mean, the input cost of electricity, both in India and Pakistan, is increasing. Uh, there's a major part. And the labor, you see, yes, rightly so. Labor rates are increasing at least 15 to 20% per year. So this all is adding to the cost of production. No, then there's a GI tussle between India and Pakistan, and we are still in the middle of that. Another factor which is creating problem is the phytosanitary standards. Phytosanitary standards, India is suffering for the last 3 4 years because of the high MRL issues in of pesticide. They have Europe has banned them. So that is another problem. You see, what we have not done, the research we are making is to produce the paddy in the coarse form, and once you process it and it is exportable, say steam rice, hardly the recovery is 30 to 35%. It means that 65 to 68% is not wastage, but of the inferior value. I mean, the brokens are sold in the half price, the rejection is sold in the almost 60% price. And uh, what we have to, is to see, our scientists in India and Pakistan have to see that the recovery of milling recovery should increase. One thing is that if you look at the husk is like 20 21% of the coarse grain. Our scientists should work to reduce the weight or percentage of the husk, which is 20%, and they should make research to see that if we can reduce it by 15%, 15%, then the 5% it can go to recovery. So I think that research mindset has to change. The race is at the moment to go for the more production, but I would say that now we should more and more focus on the milling recovery by reducing the 5% weight of the husk to 15%. I don't think that the grain inside the grain will be at suffering end, or the grain will get affected. Uh, we have to find made a research on that. Uh, I think this is the most important thing which I would like to highlight today, that we should uh, diversify the parameter for the research in the basmati sector. End note, I would like to finish it today. The end note is that this year is not very good for the rice, okay, for the basmati especially. We both India and Pakistan, we have lost near about 10 to 12% of the global trade. Uh, Due to pandemic, the purchasing price of the people is decreasing. So we have to make it more economical for the outside world, or for the new consumers. Otherwise, they will shift to other aromatic varieties like Thai home rice, like Thailand, in forest areas. So I think we have to work on that. Thank you very much for listening patiently. We'll see you next time.